All right, guys, we are like 75% done with April, right? It's the 18th, so past halfway, 60% done. I don't know. Down here in Alabama, we like count down April because severe weather season, like for us, peaks late March, mid to late April, and then we start to slowly see things chill out, and they need to chill out.
Whenever we get through mid to late April and there hasn't been a lot of severe weather in Kansas City, we're just like, oh, we skipping it this year? Like, we good? And then half the time it's, yes, we are skipping it this year. And then it's like, nope, that was just warming up.
Big fake out. Yeah. I'm meteorologist Evan Chickvera. I'm in Birmingham. This is also meteorologist Wes Peary. He's in Kansas City, and we like to talk weather. We try to be wise, and we're two guys, so that's where the name comes from. This week, Wes. So for you folks out there, we've done some fun stuff. I personally think this is a ton of fun,
Yeah.
but it's gonna be kind of like weather nerdy based here because some of the headlines, if you guys pay attention out there to the weather or maybe on a national level, at the beginning of April, and I didn't realize this until it had happened, we had a record number of tornado warnings issued year to date going back to 1986. So I was like, well, that's interesting. We'll take a look at some of the other years involved in that and why it could be happening. And I just want to really get your opinion, Wes. I don't think there's a right answer yet, but verification numbers. We're going to briefly glimpse in that. And verification is, okay, tornado warning was issued. Did it happen? And we'll talk about what the national average is and how our local offices are doing because we're pretty lucky, I have to say. And then
Those numbers are interesting in the fact that, like, you think that they should be higher, and I guess they should be, but even those numbers are good.
and that's kind of what I was trying to figure out is what's the threshold over a big severe market area, and then how does it look? And we both have offices that are way above. And actually, the trends over the years, this kind of goes off of something we talked about several episodes ago, is the improvement in forecasting. And this is more or less like the improvement of actual like now weather, but it just goes to show like the jumps we're making. And it's a good thing because it's going to help, I think, in the long run if we stay on this path. So, but yeah, we got good stuff. We're going to talk about where the tornado threat is shifting. Wes sending it your way, and then a little astronomy minute. We got a meteor shower. So,
How do you say it? How do you say it? Lyrids, Lyrids?
I thought it was Lyriads, but I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure these are all Latin in origin because that's when they were first observed. And when I've looked it up before, the syllable or the letter combination is not what we would think of. And I almost always say it wrong on the air. And immediately people are like, this guy doesn't know. Like, oh, gosh. So,
Yeah, those people from Huntsville from NASA that have moved their way down to Birmingham and correct you.
yeah, well, I get corrected a lot, usually on how I pronounce towns. But, I don't ever mean to offend anybody. But sometimes during severe weather, I take a stab at it. And it's just not right. But sorry. So,
And it's one or two people from the town of 400.
I know,
which will go through
but
the
they're the
work to
people
find
that
your email.
I don't know how your viewers are, but we rural folks watch us like big time.
Oh yeah.
So those towns of 3, 4, 500, 1,000, they're locked in. So it's important to say their name right, and I try my best, but I get it wrong. So.
You are never more famous than when you go into a town of less than 10,000. And then it's like people would just stare at you.
Yeah. We have a weather Jeep that says 3340 Storm Chaser, and Birmingham, no one cares. Hoover, Vestavia, our biggest city, nobody cares. You get out further away, and everybody's like, they walk up to you, they talk, and it's pretty cool because you get to see who your viewers are.
Give you food, everything.
Somebody brought me chili when I covered, I had ice coverage in, it was awful, by the way. It was 23 and raining, Wes. 23 and raining, and this guy and his wife saw us, and he brought me and the photographer chili.
Aw.
It was awesome.
Aw.
Wasn't poisoned either. So, good. So, all right. So what we're looking at here, Wes, is these are the amount of tornado warnings issued year to date by every weather forecasting office in the country. So basically took all the National Weather Service offices and said, okay, how many combined warnings have been issued? And up through April 8th, through the day April 7th, 2025 had the highest number. You can actually see it on here, where the cursor is. I don't know if you can actually
Hmm.
see that, but
Yeah.
right, I think a couple days after, it was higher than 2008, the other year that was really, really high. Had a very active tornado season, including here in Alabama. I think it was our second most active tornado season since 20 out of 2011. Those are the top two since 1986. But I was curious because I didn't notice a huge difference in our numbers, and we'll get to the local ones. But you know, you think back to, that's a huge sample size. We've had outbreaks in years, but it goes to show that we are more active earlier in the season. So I guess my question to you is, and this is not really fair to throw on you, but what I thought of is, our severe weather season potentially shifting, or is this just like an anomaly? Because we have had our worst since I've been here, and even when I was in Dothan, our March has been the worst, but historically April was the case. So, I, you know, just curious why there were so many this year.
Maybe. I'm not going to say yes. I'm not going to say no, right? Because the whole, I don't know if we've ever actually, anyone has delved into the statistical analysis of it. I would say for this year in particular, we're just, both of us are just lucky enough to really not have been impacted too much by, like, apparently the enormous amount of severe weather that's been ongoing. And whenever we show that tornado reports map, I mean, it's happening just right between us.
Yeah.
If we were, if it was this time last year, maybe this time a month from now last year, and we were looking at the same graph where it's like 2025 is second most active, I'd be like, absolutely, it's been nuts. I've been working a ton. There's been so many tornadoes, but then at the same time, it's like I don't know if I don't know if Little Rock, Mississippi, like you all weren't experiencing as many tornadoes as what our part of Tornado Alley was. And so sometimes it's all really relative, right? Like only the weather around you is what people care about the most, not necessarily the weather somewhere 7 to 10 hours away.
Yeah.
So it's really tough to diagnose any sort of like trend with that, just from my own personal experience. But again, we give it a month, and the funny thing is maybe like Kansas and Missouri's tornado count goes way up, but then nationally it falls down, and then it's like you just don't know
I
what to
think
say
this
because
is
it's all
telling.
relative.
So it's great that you say that, because it really is. You have the factors of what sort of events coming through. Is it supercell or QLCS? What's going to trigger more warnings? What's uncertain? And how the forecast office, you know, how they operate. So, but this is y'all through April 14th. So we were talking about this, how your severe weather season is later than ours. So this graph makes sense to me. Y'all haven't had a ton, and outside of being aware of the weather everywhere else, this has not been an abnormal season for warnings, with respect to tornadoes so far.
Yeah, and if you just, so I'm looking at the bottom right of this entire graphic where it says 2025, 2024, 2023, 20, all that. So you see this year there's been five for Topeka, eight the last year. And then if you go all the way up through 2018, there's really hardly ever been much going on
Yep.
through this
A lot
point
of
in
zeros.
April. Yeah, and then one, okay, 2017, there's eight. Okay, and then there's nothing for a few years, and there's 15, and there's six, and then it kind of just bounces around. In the early 2000s, there's like nothing that happens kind of situation, which could be a, a technological thing and with the early 2000s situation as well. But yeah, it seems like we just will randomly get super active years for a year or two and then just calm down.
So you guys, to give an idea for people who are out there, this is a look at when you guys receive most of your tornadoes. So I was looking at, I know you're multiple like markets, but the Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Nebraska realm, right in there, all
Mm-hmm.
peaks. You see the most tornadoes on average. This is by percentage. So if you're looking at this outside of here, 100% is your total. And then 36% of the tornadoes, I think this goes back to it's either 1980 or it might be 1950. It was harder finding a big sample size. But either way, this gives a good idea of when you guys typically see an uptick. Um,
Yeah, it's May. And it's the fact that April has started off, I mean, relatively quiet. Like, I mean, what we saw maybe eight in April up to this point. So we're maybe hitting average up to this point in April. And then yeah, May. I'm actually off for a week in May, so I hope for my
what?
colleagues' sake that that's a week in which we don't have much going on to speak of. And then June is when you start to get into those squall lines moving through, not so much the individualized. So your storm type will change from April and May to individualized storms, kind of this later part of May and into June. It's a mix of individualized storms and then squall lines that blow through as you're getting warmer air passing up from the Gulf.
So I showed this. This is you guys through April 14th. Okay. And I'll show the Birmingham one because, you know, again, it's all relative, like you said. But we
We've
have,
5 versus 42.
isn't that nuts? So it's like, but even look at previous years, like y'all's graph, look at your scale. It goes up to 20. Ours goes up to 120.
Oh yeah,
So
good point.
that to me is very telling of the difference in our tornado seasons. You're probably going to tack on a lot of numbers to yours, and ours is probably going to trend down. But it's it's interesting to me, and my takeaway from all of this, and you said it was relative, and it is we have had huge jumps in our ability to read radar. If you guys ever get bored, go look at what Doppler radar looked like or radar looked like in the 80s, 90s, and even early 2000s versus now. We're able to identify some stuff that, and maybe that confidence leads us to issue more of the warnings. So just because there's a ton of warnings doesn't necessarily mean it's crazy active across like the board. You know, do these verify? Were there tornadoes? You know, there's a lot that goes into it. But anyway, I thought we'd touch on it because it was a stat that was floating out there, and yeah, just curious what we thought.
Maybe I'll have to just for posterity's sake go look at the graph and put it like through the end of May and see what the counts have been historically and compare that to what like you guys are at. Or maybe like in middle of May for me, middle of April for you, and see like how they compare.
That would be a good idea because if you look, so here's April, and this is to 99, but again, gives a good size. Where do you see most of like the oranges and reds? Kansas is in there,
Yeah.
but southeast. Um, and then we get into May, and this is where I'm like, all right, we're doing better because the focus shifts further to the north. So
Way north. Yeah.
yeah, that's
I
what I
mean,
should have
like
done.
you guys went from an average of 16 in Alabama to 5, and then we went from like 8 to 14 or something like that. Yeah. 8, 13 and 8, and then 37 and 14.
It's a big jump.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for reminding me that I had thought I was going to have an easy year this year. And maybe I'm just illusional or delusional for the time being.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time we had a crazy May. When I worked in Dothan, which is much closer to the beach, we were done. We didn't get tornadoes in May, really. I mean, not to say that there's never been, but it really was quieting down. So if we can get through, I'm going to Disney next week with the family. So we need to get through this. Yeah, I know.
Good luck.
I know. I was nervous, but Lauren, she picked it, and I said, okay, this is going to make you happy. It was cheaper, supposed to not be as crowded.
Okay.
We'll see. So,
Good luck.
but the other
Yeah,
thing I
April
want
is
to touch on,
stacked.
huh?
It's pretty interesting how I mean this is such a steep drop off. Like November has more tornadoes than May.
I didn't know that. Now that I look at it, it kind of makes sense. But of the top months, the top three, May's not included. And I wouldn't have guessed that. I would have said May was third to March and April. So
Which, like, I mean, if you were just to remove the numbers from this and to see the graph, it'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, there's the Southeast has a fall, mid to late fall severe weather season as the jet streams are retracting and doing all that good stuff. But yeah, I would have never thought that it would be as close as May and November. November actually having more. I mean, February and January of 217, like that. Yeah, very very surprising. Of course, you never get tornadoes in July and August
I'd
down
be
there. It's way,
curious
way
where
too
those.
hot.
I was looking at this earlier, and I didn't have time to dive into it, but I'm curious where the 93, 74, and 87 come from because I'll tell you, in Alabama, everything in the summer is just hot, humid, pop up thunderstorms. So just wondering where those came from. If it was like
Yeah,
what you guys get, maybe we had a rogue like squall line or derecho, and something formed. But yeah,
like a randomly strong cold front managed to come down south.
I, I'd love to see one. Not with tornadoes, but in the summer, that'd be great. Here are the tornado reports in April everywhere. So I was able to find there's been 148 confirmed tornadoes since April 1st. There may be more than that now, but these are the preliminary
Yeah,
reports.
up in Iowa last night there was like it was probably a strong to violent tornado going like 50 miles north of the Missouri border, just going east, and I was like, please stay up there. Like,
Was that the
please
right
stay up
turner
there.
that was like super identifiable? I saw.
Yes.
Okay, I saw that. So this does not include last night. So this is all the way up to I think April 16th is when I grabbed this data. So, but yes, add to it all those. But to build off what you said earlier, it's been between us. So Central Alabama, you see where we are. We've had some. You've had some too, but the bulk of it is right in the middle, clustered right in the middle.
Man, Boot Hill, Missouri, Northeast Arkansas. I mean, and even like a random cluster there near the, they call it the Four Corners, or sorry, the Four States. Four Corners is like Mountain West, but Arkansas, Oklahoma, Texas, Louisiana. It's
I
all
didn't
in
know
one
that was called
cluster.
that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
four states. The for some reason, one of the things that immediately jumped out to me are these anomalous tornadoes. One that looks like it happened in the mountainous region of Idaho.
Yeah. And I was not able to find if that one was verified. I'm sure the forecasting office could look into it. I don't know how a tornado forms in an elevated area like that. Outside of a very, I've seen them in Colorado when they come out of the mountains, but that's right in the thick of things. So
Yeah,
California too.
and then yeah, I'm trying to figure out what that's maybe near San Francisco. Like
I think
it's not quite in the valley, but
is
it's
Sacramento there, or is that for whatever reason, I'm picturing it being like Fresno as you come over and you're in the middle of the state. But I'm not as great with geography out there. But it certainly surprised me when I'm looking at this map and I'm like, hey, what's that doing out there?
I got a map. I'm zooming in on a map right now. It's definitely San Francisco up there. So it'll be San Jose. No, not San Jose. Stockton, Modesto, Sacramento. Yeah, you're pretty close.
Huh,
It's not quite Sacramento, but it's like Stockton and Modesto.
interesting. Well, I wonder. Look at that. Their April average is
There's
one,
the
and
one.
they hit
Hit
it.
it.
They
Hit
hit it.
it.
Interesting. So they're one and done. This is
I
on the year.
oh they're okay. That makes sense for the whole year. Yeah,
Yeah.
New Mexico. Boom, got one. These mountainous ones are actually giving me a little bit of joy because when I did this story, excuse me, about splitting effect of storms around Kansas City, I had it was clearly an old grumpy meteorologist that I don't know used to work for the National Weather Service. He said I don't know how much training within the weather he had. But he told me because I had a line in my story where I said mountains and rivers don't stop tornadoes. Why would a town of 6,000 stop a squall line? And he said, wrong. Tornadoes, or when's the last time you saw a tornado go over a mountain? And I was like, okay, that's true. I think it's probably incredibly rare for a tornado to start on one mountain, go over it, and then make its way all the way across. That's fine. But there are numerous instances of tornadoes forming in the mountains. So, like, tornadoes don't stop when they get to the other side of a mountain. Sorry, maybe tornadoes do stop as they're going up and down the mountain, but also if they form in the mountains, that's not stopping them either. So it's kind of like some strange gray area in which this guy was trying to pick me apart on.
Interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way, but I guess if you have a fairly uniform setup, even if you're elevated, it can form. But as soon as you change that, maybe like the change in going from, either the mountaintop to the surface or vice versa, that disrupts the flow of the actual mesocyclone.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's the flow, if it's the temperature change as you're going up and down in
Oh, that
elevation,
too.
what the whole situation. Clearly, something is hindering there from being tornado outbreaks in the mountains.
If you guys haven't seen, Wes did a 3-part thing, I think, on all your social platforms. But it's really cool talking about the split cell, like we touched on in our last episode. But really cool how something like a city and various things can impact the strength, the direction, and the splitting of thunderstorms.
It's crazy.
Go
And
watch it.
once, yeah, please, and once like you start to learn about things that can happen from cities, you'll start to actually observe them happening in real life, and you're like, oh my god, I thought this was just like random behavior of storms, and sometimes it is, other times it's land interaction.
Yep. I want to kind of brag on our weather forecasting offices really quick. So I've been doing it's more like on the side. I'm always curious, I'm big on when we talked about this before is less warnings, more verification, which that is totally unfair of me to just do a base notion of that. But I love working with our weather service office because they are really good at identifying a true threat. And understand, if you're at home, there are a lot of storms that have a good looking structure on radar. It doesn't mean they produce a tornado, but when you have a verification rate of this, which these are highlighted, BMX is me, and then Wes, because he's all fancy, he gets 2 offices. And his two
Extra fun.
offices, you guys actually have the same percentage down to the decimal,
That's
34%.
weird. Have you tweeted that at the BMX office to be like, give them some love, tell them how good they are, best in the southeast.
They are really, really good. And this goes back to 2007 because I started, we changed our warnings. And again, we could talk more about this in a different episode, Wes, but we went to the Polygon rather than county-based warnings February 1st of 2007. So this is looking at just all of those years because I think that's more fair. When you have the county ones, they don't verify as well, and it's a different sample size. So, but this makes our job a lot easier when you've got these verification rates, or you get. It's not to say that other areas aren't as good, but as Wes has pointed out before, there's different storm structure types that can influence this.
Yeah, if you have one little thunderstorm you're looking at and you're seeing that's rotating, that makes it much easier to warn, like to diagnose, to focus on, and go through. But if you have a bunch of different squall line situations coming through, there's a lot. It's a lot more of a moving target. You have different pieces of the line to look at, and it doesn't always produce the same type of tornado strength, length of a tornado for as long as it's on the ground. So individual storms easier than lines. But Evan, you brought up something earlier about these bottom few offices, Mobile, New Orleans.
Those two jumped out at me. Um, the other one's Arkansas down there, but Little Rock.
So why do you think they're so low?
Well, at first I saw it and I thought, man, I used to work adjacent to Mobile, so their counties butted up to Tallahassee, my last market, and I always thought they did a really good job. Then I got to thinking, I was like, how many times has there been a landfalling hurricane or a tropical storm? And for those of you out there, tropical tornadoes, tropical twisters are so hard to warn for. They happen like that, they go away like that. and try, surveying that. If there's a lot of wind damage, it can be hard to survey, which made me think, okay, that's not a fair assessment of their verification. I don't know how to skew that, but for to identify those outer bands in a tropical system, tornadoes, that's hard to do, and there can be dozens with every landfalling tropical system. So I think that's again another thing to weigh in on that particular those offices.
That's a really good point. I didn't even think about the whole damage assessment situation where, yeah, like how you can tell the difference. As a tornado comes through, then a hurricane. It's just
We
all got to
had
be radar.
Hurricane Michael when it came through in 2018. I was in Dothan. We had a ton of wind damage just to the east of Dothan, where the eye wall, to the east of the eye wall, or what was left of it, passed. There were multiple tornado warnings, but there was a tremendous amount of wind damage also. So thumbing through, and I remember reading some of the reports, is there was a lot of wind damage, so it was tough to speculate which individual was caused by, tornado damage usually looks different than wind damage, but when you have a huge area of it, how do you differentiate the two? So they have a very hard job in that sense down along the coast of getting those.
Fascinating.
So
Smart guy. Good
anyway,
call.
it was an epiphany I had partway through, but you know, anyway, I thought with us getting towards the height of the spring, and again, it's been very nerdy, kind of stat based, but we would just touch on that. And again, as we get into May, I think we're going to see active weather shift towards west, and he might have some interesting stuff to talk about moving forward.
Yeah. Yeah.
You wanna do the your forecast moving forward? How we're looking?
Yeah, let me tell you, because my forecast moving forward has been incredibly difficult. Like, even yesterday,
I saw your
uh,
AI post, the two model
yeah,
model discrepancies.
yeah, and I'm really hoping that the AI one is right for for one big reason in particular, which I will share with you in just a second. Okay, first, this cold front is just causing us a lot of headaches, and the weather models cannot figure out what's going on with the cold front. As in, is the front going to bring in the cooler air immediately, or is it going to take a little bit longer? What the deal is. So the cold air is coming in no matter what. But from what we were looking at yesterday, it was like, okay, do we hit our high temperature um, at 8 a.m. and then it gets colder, or does the cold air come in, make us a little bit colder for 3 hours, and it warms back up, like to even warmer than the morning, and then finally get colder in the evening? Could not figure it out, like at all. Like yes, last night during the 10 o'clock news, I was like, okay, there's two scenarios here. It's either just going to get strictly colder throughout the day, or get colder then warmer then colder, because literally if you were to go with like five computer models or six computer models, they were all evenly split on what was going to happen. And my colleague and I like couldn't really decipher anything either. So I'm just like, forget it. I'm just literally going to tell people there are two scenarios. That's how it is.
Flip a
Whether or
coin.
not that was the best way of going with that, I was just like, I don't. If you pick one, you're possibly right or wrong. So thankfully, I think our audience has a little bit of grace with forecasting the weather around here.
I'm about to say you are literally on the fringe of two air masses this time of year. I mean, right in the middle of the country. Like at this point, I feel like you guys could still get snow. Like it's not probably unheard of, but you could also probably be close
No,
to 90.
it was so in central Kansas in central Kansas, south central Kansas over here, it was 95 degrees yesterday. Um, and then I thought we would get to the 80s yesterday, but there's clouds and we only got to like 78. So
Oh,
that
so
was a
close.
bit of a frustrating thing. But this is where the forecast becomes really difficult, and unfortunately, like not a good time for a difficult forecast. So the rain starts to come in tonight across Oklahoma, Texas, of course, Missouri. It's probably raining in Kansas City, Illinois, Chicago, even up into New York State, the Great Lakes, all
I
that
think
good
snow
stuff.
in Denver. It looks like.
Oh yeah, there's a bunch of snow in Denver. Yeah, in the Four Corners over there in Colorado, Utah, New Mexico, Arizona. So the way that this front is drawn out would be a fantastic situation for me because the front will generally, the precipitation will follow it. But I have a weather model laid over here that has the front in a little bit of a different spot than what the graphic service that we use has it. The weather model probably has the front like right here, and that keeps the rain up into Kansas City, which I don't want because everyone is trying to have an Easter egg hunt, on Saturday because
And
we
you're
pretty
getting
much told people.
questions.
Oh yeah, questions, and then I was helping advise my coworker that they have like a big Easter egg hunt in one of the big parks around here, and there's like hundreds of kids and like fire department, cops, like like everybody comes through. And I was telling them a couple days ago, and I was like, hey, I think you're good. Like it's probably going to rain the night before, but I think for your Easter egg hunt, you're probably dry. Uh, and so since then, all of the regular weather models have brought the rain back north because at the time when I gave them that advice, everything was dry. So all of these regular computer models now bring the rain somewhat back up into Kansas City for the afternoon. A little green stripe right there.
Yeah.
And then no matter what, the rain comes back on Sunday. So that's like the Sunday forecast has been the most confident part because you're like, it's going to rain no matter what. Like your Easter egg hunts on Sunday are toast. And it goes up through Chicago, Indianapolis, Nashville, and everything like that. But the post that you were talking about is that the AI weather models, the European AI weather model, and the American weather model that like Google has developed and everything like that, actually keeps the rain like it pretty much stops it like right here. And so I'm I'm banking on that just so I don't feel like I didn't mislead a bunch of people trying to plan this Easter egg hunt that told them it was going to be dry and it wasn't dry. The AI weather models are like statistically the most accurate. They also miss forecast. Like for instance, I thought I was going to be in the 80s the other day because the AI weather models had us in the 80s. I was like, sweet, let's do it. But so did every other model also have us in the 80s. So models can get things wrong, but usually when it comes to rain placement, the AI models do a really good job. And so I'm banking on that. But whenever you have to make a forecast with your coworkers, they don't always have the same forecasting philosophy as you. And so it's like a battle between a lot of different things, which I'm sure, Evan, whenever you are making the forecast, you have to keep in consideration what your colleagues have done the night before to the
Yep.
forecast.
I always look at James numbers, and we don't always agree, but I write down. I got a forecast sheet, and I write down my numbers every day. If they're far away from his, first of all, he has a lot more experience than me. He's the better meteorologist. We'll just be clear about that. But there are times when I really don't agree. So I'll write it down. I won't really change the temperatures by much because I don't want people to have whiplash. If you watched at 10 o'clock and then you watch at some point between 4:30 and 7 and you see a completely different forecast, you're going to be confused. James you mentioned that the models get it wrong, and that happens a lot down here. What he understands, and what I'm beginning to understand, there are certain gut feelings and past occurrences you can think back on where you might be better than the model. And I think he's the same way. And from a standpoint of, I'll look at what the model data is saying. I will look at the NVM, which is the national blend. It takes several into consideration and gives you kind of that average or that middle ground, the sweet spot, if you will. But when I see him deviate from that, I'm like, he knows something. And I've watched, and then I will let it play out, knowing what I put. And sure enough, a lot of the times he was right. So it's always interesting, but with him as a chief, I'm lucky because he's really good. But I tried at my last station, he was like, do not tweak the numbers. We had him on. It was David. We had him on for the snow. He hated when I changed numbers by a couple degrees. It drove him nuts. I give an email and he goes, "What are you thinking?" And I said, "I was thinking it was going to be 72." He's like, "No, it's going to be 75." Um, but we laugh about it now. But yeah, you try to keep it uniform because the viewers are seeing the info, different meteorologists, but the same info, and they can get thrown off by the numbers.
That's man, that's really tough because sometimes overnight the like it just changes. So it's like you can have as good as an instinct as possible. Man, sometimes like the weather just shifts and it's like the forecast needs to be adjusted.
I agree, and I would adjust accordingly. But he liked to let it ride, is what David would say. He said, "Let it ride." So I've tried to take a blend of that. Like, let's give it. If I see a huge change, maybe I'll pick the middle ground of before and now, and then I'll let it go. If it's like day 5, 6, 7, I'm not going to worry about it. If it's in the short term and it's a big difference, it's like, okay, we're probably picking up on something we didn't before because you're within a certain range.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting balance. Whenever I go to school talks and I try to explain to them like the challenges of our job, it's like imagine doing a group project with the same people every single day and you have to come to a conclusion or an agreement that generally makes everybody happy. And kids just like cannot fathom that you would do a group project with the same person every single time, every single day. And I was like, it's what it is. It's what like you have to do in the adult world.
That's a good way to put it. And everybody has a different experience. So, like, um, again, the past events, whatever models you prefer. I don't know. Like some meteorologists believe more in one model than the other. But your setup is tricky because it has to do a lot with the strength of this ridge. So all week I've been saying we're dry on Easter. A couple models had it wet, bringing the front in, but in my experience with this ridge is when it sets up, it usually overperforms, meaning it deflects rain away from here longer. It keeps us warmer sometimes than what's called for. And for the time being, it looks like that's been the right call. Now, if it breaks down and this front comes through, then I'm screwed because I've given all the Easter egg forecasts a green light, a thumbs up, a good to go, because I've had that feeling, and now the models have trended that way. But if they swing back, then I might be out sick on Monday.
I think you're good. I mean, I think I see maybe one tiny green dot trying to show up. What is the? I think you're good. Yeah,
This is
maybe
the product I
Mississippi,
was using the last 2 days.
the European,
Yep, the GFS was out to lunch. It was
and
having
yes,
lunchtime cocktails.
on a Friday. It looks like you're good until Monday. Yeah, Birmingham, and yeah, that front just kind of hangs around for a couple days.
What's crazy too is people ask me sometimes that why we say a cold front's coming through but it doesn't get cold, and that was a good question. I said that it denotes a boundary. It could be relatively cool, so I started calling it a cool front because we don't really get cold now. We had
Yeah,
our last cold spat this week. We got down to 39, 38, 35 in some earlier this week, but um, we're 80 all next week, so we don't really get cool. Or cold. It's just cool.
yeah, and here it is. Yeah, like a 83 for Easter egg hunting on Saturday afternoon, and then Sunday about 80, lower 80s or something like that.
Yeah,
Looks pretty good.
I got 83.
And we are raining and 40. Don't worry about that. And then yeah, next week, let's see what you guys are doing. Tuesday, a little rainy, so of course it's cooler in the 60s. Then we'll try to get back up in the 70s in Kansas City. Looks like you guys are in the 80s again Wednesday. Up there Thursday. Yeah, looks like smooth sailing for the most part once you get through this rain down there.
And we I think the thing of emphasis that I said like to our team in the morning meeting is this time of year can be really busy with systems. The fact that we have this synoptic system or this frontal system crossing the country without a major severe threat outside of, I think tomorrow, maybe the next day, there's a slight risk, is a big deal. By the time it gets to us, the upper air support, the big trough, the jet stream is so far north that there's no threat. So warm and quiet.
Yeah, there's a severe threat. The biggest one is probably later on today, as the warm air is just hitting the front as it's starting to stall out. But I don't. It's there's not much. I mean, I
It's
guess
not a very
maybe
impressive one. I'll say that.
down there in the tornadoes, and then day two. Uh, yeah, Nothing of our concern. It's just probably just a bunch of wind and hail, moisture, just hitting the same spots over and over again. Oh, hold on. Speaking of moisture, what is this? Is this
Uh-oh.
hitting? Oh, I hope this isn't hitting the ground because I didn't think it was going to rain like this.
Wes might have to go
Oh,
to
it
work.
is. It is a little bit rain. Oh, there's a thunderstorm.
Oh, live
Oh,
action. Oh, man.
brother.
Just for the record, people
Oh
out there, this is
gosh.
the worst feeling is once you said it's not going to happen, we've all been there, and then there's a deluge. And then you see somebody at Walmart and they're like, hey, you're the weather guy. And I'm like, nope.
I thought there could be light rain, but my God, I didn't think it would be like this. Oh man. All right, Evan. I think I'm done showing the weather now.
Okay, you know what?
I think
Let's
I'm good on that.
Okay, that's fine. You know what? I got some fun stuff to share. So you
Uh,
talked about Kansas being hot. Take a look at this. This is the first time we've had an Arizona one. This is down near Yuma. And on April 12th, they not only set but shattered a previous record, which I believe was around 99 or 100. The average high for this time of year down in the Yuma area is 88. Imagine going over. I don't remember the last time when we broke a record, we broke it by a ton. And then we also broke it by, how much is that from average? 10, like 18 degrees?
Something
16?
like that. 16. Yeah. 16
So
above.
for the third week running, Michigan has the coldest spot,
26 below average.
26 below average. And this was also a record low. So this goes to show it's all relative. Where you're having record highs somewhere doesn't mean it's hot everywhere. Where you're having record lows doesn't mean it's cold everywhere. These are air masses in battle, and it certainly can still get cold this time of year. Just ask the folks in the UP of Michigan. They have had a ridiculously cold last 3 weeks.
I wonder if the water up there is still really cold as well for it to be this cold.
So I was curious about that too. If
Mm,
Lake Superior, which is just north, is maybe frozen over more, and that's causing something because that's one of those like regional things that you'd have to like live there, observe it, and know it, and it very well could be because it's been cold. So on on astronomy here, as we
yes.
move forward. I'm pretty excited about this one because I love meteor showers. I will get up early. I leave my house between 3 and 3:15, and I'll get up early to try to see this. So we have several throughout the year, Wes, that happen every year because we go through what is known as the tail of a comet. And this one is called Thatcher, and we go through this one typically in April, and the range really has already started, but it peaks I think on the 21st and 22nd. I don't know if it's, oh yeah, there, it's on the graphic. So it peaks the 21st and 22nd. You can see up to 25 meteors an hour on the high end, 10 to 20, right around 15 is probably the norm, but should be pretty cool if you want to hop out and see. Best viewing is going to be well away from any city lights. Like you get out in the country, and we have those spots in Alabama, you'll be able to see this pretty good.
I think the best viewing is also in the southeastern United States where it's not going to be raining for, for the next 3 days or so.
Yep. We'll have some periods where there's no clouds, so you should be able to see this. But it goes all the way until I think the end of April technically. So
Okay.
you have a chance. You have a chance, Wes.
There's a chance.
This day in history, I thought this was interesting. So we'll start with this one. As per usual, you can go almost any day in history and see an outbreak. And this one kind of tailed between your viewing area and the others. When I saw this outbreak, I thought, oh man, I wonder what the death toll was. For 1996, this is really good. Good. You never want to see a number, but there were, I think, upwards of, it was close to 60, maybe 60 plus, 69 tornadoes that day. One fatality. That's an awesome job by the broadcasters, the weather service office. When I look at these days in history and look at the stats, there's a lot of times fatalities. Now there's a lot of injuries, but one fatality, I feel like that stood out to me as something that happened back in the 90s when we didn't have social media and all the ways to get warnings.
Well, let me tell you, brother, these tornadoes are going through very sparsely populated areas as well. So that is definitely helping. You have tornadoes going through essentially the Mississippi River. So those are all farming communities down there near the Boot Heel. That's all farming communities. You got the mountainous, I think semi-mountainous areas of Kentucky, and so that's also pretty rural. Central Illinois is, I mean, there's Springfield in there. There are some small towns, but thankfully, a lot of these are hitting in spots that just don't have a whole lot of people that live in there
I
in the
didn't know
first
that.
place. So maybe they're going through farm areas and they have root cellars or storm cellars, and so they're somehow maybe able to hear the tornado sirens and get down there in a decently quick enough time. But yeah, this thankfully, I mean, it's a ton on a map. Like just looking at this plotted, that's a lot of tornadoes. But this is a pretty rural area, thankfully.
Interesting. That was great context because I was looking at different events and I thought, man, this is, this was over the span of, I believe, 24 hours. It occurred between the 19th and the 20th. So it was the afternoon of the 19th when it started, rolling into early morning on the 20th, which was a Saturday. And I thought, man, that's a pretty active day to confirm over 60 tornadoes and have one fatality. But that's a great point. I don't know that area geographically as well, so I wouldn't have been able to pinpoint that. So
So where those little like F2, F1, F3, they're by
uh,
themselves toward the middle of Springfield or toward the middle of Illinois. Springfield, Illinois is there, but I mean south of that where all those other clusters are, there's not much. There's not much else going on. Um,
interesting.
so I think some luck on that one. Thankfully,
The other one, and I don't really have a way to verify this because I wasn't able to find anyone alive, but the first engagement of the Revolutionary War took place under a recorded, clear, crisp, cool morning in Lexington, Concord.
oh,
So as they started
huh,
fighting, the forecast was good,
huh, it's
trying to
good.
take back from the British.
I don't know how they I don't know how they computed that one. If it was like super stormy, a couple days later or a couple days previously, they're like, all right, it should be nice and clear now. We're
Before
good.
going to battle, they hopped in, they hopped out of their tent, observed, hopped
Yep.
back inside, and were like, "Hey, I know what this is. It's clear, crisp, and cool. All right, let's go to war."
A northerly wind is here.
Yep.
It's
So
calm.
they were good at forecasting. I got a lot of work to do.
Syracuse, New York.
How did I miss this one? I looked at it. This is the one I've looked at the most. And I looked at it every day leading up to. I almost sent
Oh
you my forecast
no.
on Tuesday. I was that confident in it. Um, but the
Oh
trend was down.
no.
So it was 50, it was forecast like 51, 52 for much of the week. Then it swung to like 46. And I was like, I'm going to go in the middle, like 50. Nuts.
Well, isn't that airport like by a lake?
Yeah.
That's what was a little. That's what I thought would be a little bit tricky. Is maybe there'd be some sort of like water influence here on what was going on. And I was like, no, the Moss should have this figured out to some extent.
Did you lean on the moss?
I leaned on the GEFS Moss and the European Artificial Intelligence Forecast System.
I need to experiment more with the AI stuff. I have not really used that at all. So I'm curious how that will work. Regionally or everywhere. You've done a lot more than I have, so I need to get into that. But
Yeah, it's kind of just laziness at this point. It's just like, this thing is supposed to be super duper good, so let me just give it more weight. And it's still wrong sometimes. Like it was not in the 80s 2 days ago. So it definitely has its flaws, just like every other model does. And if you use it to solely forecast, you're gonna get it wrong for sure. But it it still does really really good job once you learn how to use it.
I think interpreting too is a big thing, and of course knowing the area. So you pick this. Why San Francisco?
Haven't we done some town like this, like San Jose or something like that?
What did we do? I don't remember. We did a
Something like
California
that.
one though because I remember
Yeah.
thinking, okay, this is
Sacramento.
was it Sacramento? You know what? It may have been Sacramento. I think it was. It was one of the early weeks. But the
Reason why
Bay
I did
the Bay
good.
Area. This will be interesting because I'm pretty sure it stays pretty cool. Like I've been to San Diego, and if you're in San Diego or close to the water, it's really cool. If you go to the east or to the south, like down towards the border, it gets much, much warmer, like by a significant amount, as you get away from that cold Pacific Ocean.
So I did this because apparently it is easy to forecast for San Francisco, but only for each location, like marine, inland,
Do we need to
mountains,
specify location so we
all
look
of
at the
that. The
right?
airport, San, whatever the airport is, whatever the international airport is. So it's like on the bay.
Cool.
So that means this will be an accuracy exacto forecast competition here because it is, according to someone that I used to work with that forecasted for San Francisco for a very long time. Apparently, the weather at each location is pretty consistent on a daily basis.
Okay. So this will really tell who's better at forecasting, right?
Who's
Like,
or who we'll have to maybe we'll look back and see who got the Sacramento one right and make them the California
I'm pretty
forecasting
sure that was in the
champ.
run where you almost won 5 in a row. And I was going to take a pie to the face. Um,
I don't know what this stretch is right now. That I don't know if I've done 3 in a row.
what was it? 3? Well, that was 2. I snuck one in there somewhere.
You
And then you
did.
looked at the
No, you
wrong
definitely did.
sensor, but you still won.
A gnome or something like that.
Is that what it was?
It
Yeah.
may
I
have
didn't
been
tell you the
gnome.
specific site, but
POAM for an airport code.
so we hit on the warnings so far this year, and really, it's a small sample size. It's hard to take from. Severe weather season hopefully is winding down here, but could be picking up there. And the weather forecast offices are pretty good. So what do we talk about next time?
Um, Maybe. Well, let's hope that nothing disastrous happens. In either of our cities anytime soon. But wind. That's what I was hoping maybe we address soon. Wind. It's like, why do we have wind?
That is a
We,
question I get all the time. Almost every age group of schools.
why does the wind blow? What do I do if I'm outside and there's a tornado and I can't find my grown up? Another school question we get all the time.
Lots. My granddad's truck got picked up and he got struck by lightning. It's a story I've been told more than once by different kids.
That's crazy.
Yeah, they see stuff. So, but I like it. We'll do wind, talk about some of the basics, and hopefully there hasn't been anything crazy.
Hopefully it doesn't rain on Saturday here.
Yeah, we need to be nice to Wes. Be nice. We get it wrong sometimes. Thanks for watching. It's Weather Wise, guys. It's been fun. If you want to hear something talked about, if you don't like us, if you like us, let us know. It'd be great. Happy Easter.
Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, we are on Spotify. If you're
Thank you.
listening to us on Spotify, we're on YouTube and possibly Apple Podcast as well.
So if you're hearing us and you want to see what we look like, that may or may not be a good idea. So you leave it to imagination.